We're now talking with Ross Mitchell, who's VP Commercial Operations at Bombardier at the Dublin Finance Conference. Thank you very much for spending some time with me.
Thank you.
At the conference, there's been a lot of talk about the crossover jet, which is a nice new term. But I'd like to get back to the real big market here for the regional jet, which is the US essentially.
Right.
What's happening in that market?
Sure. I mean, the U.S. has always been a core market for regional jets. It's the biggest market, has been from the beginning. In fact, many of our early customers were from the U.S. for the CRJ 200s. And there are quite a lot of them out there operating, a lot of 50-seat jets today. And I think the big play in the regional market is really that a number of those 50-seat jets are going to retire over time. The scope clause ensures that the biggest regional jet you get, at least for the foreseeable future, is 76 seats. So the play is really around the existing aircraft in the market, how they will be replaced. And certainly our view is that there's a replacement cycle is coming. We've seen fuel prices increase this year, which certainly will lead people to evaluate some of their older assets. We still maintain 2 aircraft on our production line that are capable of fulfilling the demand in the United States market and are under the scope clause limit. So we have both the CRJ 700 and the CRJ 900 available for customers. And we see 900s at 76 seats, so right up against the scope clause number. And we see the 700 at anywhere from sort of 64 seats to 70 seats. And again, able to satisfy the scope clause. And what we see evolving is as 50-seat aircraft begin to retire, we believe that they'll be replaced not only by 76-seat CRJ 900s, but by 64, 65-seat CRJ 700s in 2 class. And it's quite natural and easy for an existing CRJ 200 operator to replace his 200 with a 700. The 700 will offer you better seat costs. It will fit directly into the network. The pilots can transition from a 200 to a 700 quite easily. And these days with pilot supply issues, you want to make sure that it's an easy and seamless transition and that the pilots aren't out of service for a long time when they have to transition to a new airplane. So we certainly see some dynamics there that would favor our 2 airplane family in that particular market. And as the average fleet ages, particularly in the 50-seaters, we think that replacement cycle will begin to heat up, and you'll see a number of those aircraft being sold into the market. And frankly, if you're looking at replacing a 50-seat airplane, a 64-seat airplane isn't a very big jump. Your trip cost isn't that much higher, but your seat costs will be lower. And given the changes at some of our competitors, we're really the only ones able to offer a proper 64 to 70 seat airplane and the advantages that has. So we think that's probably a good thing for us, and that will help the 700 and the 900 program going forward. And beyond the US market, we also see China as an emerging market that will be quite important. Rule 96 is out there now. A lot of people may not be completely familiar with it, but it mandates that startup carriers begin with an airplane that's below 100 seats, and they must build up 25 of them and achieve certain utilization before they can go out and buy larger airplanes. So this puts the emphasis in China on aircraft that are sort of in that 60 to 100 seat space. And again, we have aircraft in that space. The CRJ 900 is operating today with China Express quite well. China Express has been building their fleet over time. And the VTC, the certification in China, there's only a couple of airplanes that meet the requirements that have that certification. It's our Q400 and our CRJ 900. So again, we believe we're well positioned in a market that today isn't necessarily large for regional aircraft, but will be in the future, will be extremely important. And we're there already and able to take advantage of our leadership in China with the CRJ.
Quick question about what you mentioned, the fact that fuel prices have gone up.
Yeah.
In fact, if we look back 12 months, fuel prices doubled. What should that be meaning to operators of regional jets? Doubling of the fuel price, you would think people would be hysterical.
Yeah, we haven't seen a great reaction yet to the fuel prices. I think while the airlines are making profits, they've probably not necessarily been affected in the same way they were when fuel prices ran up a few years ago. But certainly a doubling of one of your inputs, your cost inputs, should be something that you take attention to, and that certainly you would want to look at the older assets you have, particularly 50-seat airplanes, and determine whether now is the time to start thinking about replacement with a CRJ 700 or a 900.
What are the options if you were a regional airline operator in the United States, certainly? What are the options when you look at doubling of fuel price, which is obviously a major input? What do you do? Do you upgrade, like you say, upsize? Do you get rid of more 50-seaters? Do you cut routes? What are the sort of options?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably some of all of what you just mentioned. Certainly, you might scale back the use of smaller aircraft that have a higher fuel burn per seat. You might look at changing your network around and using a larger equipment like a 70 or a 90-seater. So change the equipment, reduce the frequencies, change the network a little bit. You might do that. Certainly, if you move up from a 50-seat CRJ 200 to a 65-seat 700 or a 76-seat 900, you're going to have a better fuel per seat number, and that will help you deal with the increase in the fuel price. So I think you'll see some of that working out over the next couple of years, and we certainly expect fuel prices to stabilize and continue, with some element of inflation there as well.
One quick question on China. You make a very interesting observation with this Rule 96. How long before we see you mentioned one customer you have there. How long before we see more of these kinds of opportunities bubble up in the Chinese market that require regional jets?
Well, it's hard to put a timeline on it. I certainly think that the fact that this rule is out there, and there are a number of places in China that may be underserved, particularly in the west of the country, that you'll see opportunities for regional jets and perhaps turboprops as well. And like I said, we're well positioned because we have certification for both aircraft already in China. And the only other two aircraft that have certification are domestically produced aircraft. And so it's a large market, and right now it's restricted for a few manufacturers that will be able to take advantage of the airlines that inevitably come and start up into that market.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.